Here we are. Our guest is here. We are joined with Professor Marandi. Professor, this is not a good day, but welcome to the show. How are you doing? You doing all right? I can
Okay,
see you.
thank
Can
you.
you?
How are you doing?
There you are.
One second.
Professor, can you give us
Is
a
this
heads up of
okay
what's
or
taking?
is
No, no, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. Can you give us a heads up of what's taking place on the ground? I'm not going to keep you
okay?
long because I know this has been a rough day. But what is happening on the ground where you are?
Well, as you know, and as everyone knows by now, the Israelis, with American help, they have started a campaign against Iran, and a lot of what you're hearing online, because I'm seeing the Telegram channels and all and misinformation, but they have hit different areas, different air bases, different bases, different. They've hit a lot of civilians in Tehran. They bombed our neighborhood. They killed women and children, and lots of apartments. There's a building that was 5 stories, 2 apartments in each, and the whole thing. They brought it down. I think so far in Tehran, 70 or so people were killed. I think that the Iranians weren't expecting the Israelis to target officials because that's a declaration of war. I think they were expecting them to target radar and military bases and things like that, but not to engage in all out war. But it does seem that this was pre planned, and Trump's statements uh, show that he's very much a part of it and he's behind it. And of course, the French have supported it. They are supporting the, uh, the the strikes against Iran. So, in other words, if a genocidal ethno supremacist regime that's affiliated to the West, if it attacks anyone, anywhere, at any time, the West supports it. And if it slaughters women and children, it's fine. That's how the West works. And so this is where we are. I think that the Iranians will respond tonight or tomorrow. I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they are preparing themselves for a massive response. And the Israelis are using Iraqi airspace, Syrian airspace, Jordanian airspace. They're using uh, the Americans are helping with radar bases in Turkey. Those who always tell us how the Turkish government or the Qatari government are supporters of Palestine. Their bases are being used against Iran, and in Qatar and the Emirates, in Bahrain, all of these bases are being used just like they were used against Yemen, and
Yes.
just like they were used against Gaza. They're being used now, and Lebanon, and everywhere. They're being in Syria, of course. Now they're being used against Iran, but the Iranians have their key assets deep underground, and therefore, I don't think that the Israeli regime will be able to uh, stop a severe Iranian retaliation.
Professor, I have to ask this. I don't mean to be brutal with this question.
Sure.
I when we talked before, I kind of pointed out that I didn't trust the negotiations. I think I even pointed out I didn't trust the Saudis. My strong sense was that there's been a continuity of policy going all the way through where Iran was a target and they wanted to go after the target. A country that has murdered 200,000 people, why would Iran be shocked that they went after leadership? That's what they did for
No, I
Hezbollah.
agree. I
No,
agree.
please.
I agree. I think that you're absolutely correct. I'm just giving you my understanding of what happened. I can't say for certain that's what happened, but I think they were expecting a strike, but they were and strikes, but they weren't expecting the political and uh,
Military.
military leadership of the country to be directly attacked because that's a declaration of war. And but you're right. Yeah, they should. They I think they should have. With hindsight, I think it's quite clear that that was a mistaken calculation. But I can't say that the Saudis or when they came to Tehran as a part of this broader plan because I don't see how it changes Iran's calculations. And the negotiations, I also can't say that the negotiations brought this assault about in themselves because if Iran did not participate at the negotiating table,
They would have done this
then
anyway.
they would have done this anyway, and they would have been able to convince many across the world that it's Iran's fault. They have some. They probably have something to hide. They're not willing to negotiate. They're probably doing. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Just if you've been watching the Western media today, they've been trying to justify this aggression very subtly by
Preemptive
repeating
attack.
Netanyahu's claims and that Iran was on the verge and that they don't have to necessarily say that that is true, but they just keep repeating these arguments and these statements. And I haven't been invited on any Western media outlet except for Sky News. And after Sky News, I was supposed to be on BBC, and as soon as it finished, they canceled. I think they probably saw me on Sky. So it's a sort of the information that people are fed in the West is completely one-sided. So if Iran had not participated at the negotiating table, it would have given them an excuse. I don't see unless Iran, if someone was to say, well, Iran sat at the negotiating table, gave this, and this, and that created a dangerous situation or that brought about a catastrophe, I would agree. But Iran didn't wasn't willing to give up anything uh,
Well, sovereignty
denied it
should have
that
never
would
been on
deny
the
its
table.
sovereignty. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying sovereignty should have never been on the table anyway. Like
Yeah.
meaning,
Exactly.
yeah,
Well, Iran is
should
not going to negotiate its sovereignty, and that's why the negotiations have failed so far. But but it's tough for the resistance. It's been tough for the last 20 months. And one thing that I think that some people should rethink is the role that Turkey, the role that Qatar, the role that all these countries are playing. That they are basically in the American camp, and they are not friends of. I don't mean the populations, of course. Of course, Qatar doesn't have a population, but I mean
governments.
Turks are.
Yeah.
But the government is not a friend of Palestine. It's a friend of NATO. It is a part of NATO. So we are seeing Iran basically alone uh, with the axis of resistance, and it's a heavy burden. And right now, it's been a very difficult day. Again, it's a lot of what you're seeing online is exaggeration. A lot of it is manipulated. It's not as if it's some of the things I know are not true, but it is they're striking
Difficult way.
Iranian asset. They're striking Iranian
Let me ask you
military
this:
assets.
if if they would have launched True Promise 3 immediately, and the reason what I'm asking that is, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mossad agents used the time frame of negotiations because again, these negotiations were never really real. But the time frame of these negotiations to set up camps internally, to create electronic warfare, to go after air defenses and everything else. I understand why Iran was being patient and trying to get a deal, but was it a mistake not to respond forcefully to create deterrence earlier, as opposed to the wolves were always at the gates? They were always coming. And the West, as you point out, were always going to lie. They were never going to be an honest arbiter of what happened. They are literally putting out preemptive strikes as if Iran was ever going to attack Israel first. It was never going to happen. And yet the media is reporting it that way meaning they were never going to get a fair and honest shake on this.
Yeah, you're right. Well,
Should
I would again, yeah. Sorry.
no, 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 please. I'm just curious because I do. The last question was just going to be straight from Moose. Like, what's going to be the response? Are they going to hit the oil fields? Are they? What is going to be the Iranian response from your point of view?
I don't know what response will be, or the size of the response, and I know that the Israeli regime will definitely be hit hard. But I don't know what other calculations there are because I'm not privy to
Yeah,
this
part
sort
of
of
the
thing,
government.
obviously. But what I can say is that some of the things that you're hearing about the Israelis regime setting up camp in Mossad, these are also exaggerations, and there's a huge amount of propaganda in that. And I don't if they are, I'm sure they have people inside Iran. They buy off people, and Iran is a huge country, and it's a massive country. So things can be done in this country without the knowledge of the government. But I'm just saying that some of this is exaggeration. But
That's fair.
uh, but I also think that I don't think that Iran was just is negotiating doesn't necessarily mean that the armed forces and the security forces are just sitting at home doing nothing. I don't think that the Israelis have that sort of foothold, and I'm sure that the Israeli regime doesn't have that sort of foothold in Iran. But right now, it's a dark day, and so there's going to be a lot of rumors, and there's going to be a lot of exaggeration and misinformation, and people are going to put things out there that are not true, or things that are true. They're going to make it look bigger than they really are. We'll
Actually,
have to wait and see. I think this is the first hours, and Iran is right now regrouping. They've swiftly appointed new commanders to replace the uh, commanders that were martyred. Uh, a lot of again, a lot of these commanders, their families were also murdered, and
yeah,
their neighbors were murdered, and it's just amazing how the West can do whatever it wants in the world that we live in, and get away with it. And when you speak to them in the media, well, if they allow you to speak, uh, they act as if somehow you are the problem.
responsible party,
Just like Gaza. It's never ending. Whether it's Lebanon or Gaza or the West Bank or Syria or elsewhere, and then we have a lot of foolish people who seem to, out of some sort of spite and hatred, sectarian hatred, racial hatred uh, that they've been programmed to uh, to pursue, that they are cheering on the Israelis. Their hatred for Iran and the resistance, I find quite stunning, and it does come from these Salafi Wahhabi uh, groups and organizations that are funded by oil and gas. Well, but will it's very early. Let's see what
yeah,
happens in the next 2 or 3 days. But for those who are constantly say that Iran had nothing to do with the Palestinian people, all of this is about Palestine. All of the sanctions, all of the strikes, all of the uh, collaborations that we see against Iran, it's all about Palestine. The problem, the United States doesn't have a problem with Iran because of its nuclear program, or because of human rights, or because of terrorism, or anything like that. It's all about Iran's anti-imperialist position, anti-colonial position, its support for the Palestinian people, and that's why Qatar would never be attacked, or the Emirates would never be attacked, or Turkey would never be attacked. Anything that's associated with the Palestinian people and the rights of the Palestinian people, that's what's being targeted. And that's the empire is doing it right now. And as I said, the French president supports the
yeah.
Israeli strategy. They have a right to defend themselves.
Professor, thank you for this. Please be safe. I'm sorry that this is a rough day, but thank you for this.
Thank you for having me. No, yeah, we're here. We're not moving. Have a good day.
You too. Have a good one.